Hello everyone, I'm coming to you from my basement, and I'm sure that you've noticed by now there's not a motorcycle I'm working on or a dirt bike or something I'm restoring. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you why I think we're going to have two presidents in 2021. I'm going to tell you why we're going to have two presidents. What we have is a completely divided country. This country is 50%, whatever you want to call them, socialist, and I don't know what you would call, they're not, I guess they'd be conservatives, but you've got basically a completely divided country. And so in the past, the etiquette was if you lost the election, then you took your party and your 50% and you threw it into the mix and you said, okay, you won. We're gonna try to stomach you, but we won't get verbally in your way and we won't be out there trying to undercut what you're doing, at least on the surface. So what we have now, it's different, is we've got a silent majority that's come out. And basically, if President Trump is unsuccessful at getting his election turned into his favor, then what we're going to have is we're going to have 50% of the people that this time are not going to follow along, because President Trump is the first outsider. He's the first guy that isn't having to deal with the political etiquette. He doesn't have to. He's not a politician, so he can really do whatever he wants. Now, I think he's probably going to try to get into the media, and that brings me down to this. We've got what is called, I call, a breakdown of the mainstream media. It's gotten so biased that just facial expressions on the CBS nightly news, it's just, no one can argue with the fact that they're completely biased for the Democrat Party. The question is do they decide what the talking points are, or does the Democratic Party decide? That's the real question. So what you have is this is no longer a secret that the mainstream media is totally in the tank for the Democrats, okay? And so now you've got some new channels that are, I guess, Newsmax and OWN, and I think President Trump, if he does not get reelected, is going to try to promote his own. And that just tells me that he is not going to go away. He's going to continue to rally after if he doesn't win. And that is going to keep this 50% on edge, and also they're woke. Let's call the 50% of independents and Republicans or conservatives, they are woke now. They are livid, and so are the Democrats. We are at such a fever pitch, and this time it's not going to go away. So anytime that the Republicans get in the way of, let's say, a bill that is part of the Green New Deal, if the Republicans vote it down, then we're going to have mobs in the street. We're going to have rioting, and we're going to have the paid protesters. They're going to be bussed in, and it can't go backwards. We can't go backwards. That's where we are now. The Democrats got behind all of the protesters and rioters, or they're all the same if you ask me. And so anytime that they come up into a brick wall, they're going to call out the forces again. So we are going to have this 50% totally engaged, this 50% totally engaged. Everyone is going to be at a fever pitch for then, I got to say, from now on out. And so what we're going to have is we're going to have two leaders. We're going to have President Trump, or former President Trump, and then we're going to have Joe Biden. If he wins, we have two presidents, because they're not going to fade into the sunset this time, and they're not going to allow what the Republicans would have allowed. You know, had this not gotten to this point, the Republicans would have kind of played ball, because really everyone in Washington's the same. They're really no different. I voted for Obama twice. There's a whole reason for that, and I'm not going to go into that, but I voted for Obama twice. And before Obama, President George Bush, when he won, he got the House and he had the Senate. So you had all three branches of government, and they couldn't get anything done. Not a single thing. He did nothing. He was going to shrink government. He was going to reduce taxes. He was going to, there's a laundry list. Same with Obama. He got elected. He had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. He couldn't get a thing done. They don't want to get anything done. But the problem is you've woken up the majority, the silent majority, no matter whose side you're on. And it now is something that's going to have to either be settled, or we're going to have some big problems. We already have big problems. We got huge problems. So anyway, COVID was somewhat of a response to a fever pitch. If we weren't at such a fever pitch over masks, just take masks. It makes sense probably to wear a mask. But if you're a damn good Republican and a damn good taxpayer, then you probably aren't going to wear a mask, or you're going to fight it everywhere you go. Who knows? When they say follow the scientists, but the scientist told me to close my toilet when I flush it because I might get COVID. I don't know if you remember that. Or don't hold handrails. Oh my God, the handrails. And what do we find out? We find out that it's later on. We find out that it's in the air. You know, it's from your breath and small particles. But they had us jumping through hoops, doing all this crazy stuff in total fear, and it changes every day. So who knows whether a mask is good or bad? But anyhow, what I'm trying to say here is that we are going to be pretty much divided with two leaders, two presidents for quite a while. And that will be good in a sense because nothing will get done. And when nothing gets done, that's better for you and me. Because we've got an economy that is going to tank. We have had trouble before. And I didn't put a list down here because there is so much on the economy that is just, right now, if you can imagine a company like American Airlines and all of the other companies that have had problems, they're getting bailed out. They're getting completely bailed out. And as soon as this election kind of winds down and we find out who's actually going to go into the Oval Office, we're going to get more bailouts. It's going to be a complete, utter bailout of cities, counties, and states. When you do that, you are taking and flooding the economy with cash. When you lower interest rates, or when you buy bonds and you do things like that, you're really not, it's not getting out into everybody's pocket. It's not getting to everyday guy is not coming home with $2,100. It kind of frees up the liquidity, and that means that banks might loan a little bit more, and then these are all loans. But when they do stimulus, that's not a loan, that's a gimme. So I explain it this way. You go to a garage sale and there's 5 people that go in and they're all looking at the same lawnmower. Now, I've worked hard and saved, and I have $300 in my pocket, and because I made decisions that allowed me to have the $300, okay? And then you've got the other 4 people who don't have, they've got $5. Well, the lawnmower's $50. So the guy who made the right decisions, I'm not saying me, I'm just using me as an example, but he can go in and say, you know what, I'll give you 25. And the guy will go, well, you're the only one that's got 25. Everyone's got $5. And they're all offering me $5. I'll take your 25. Fast forward now. Everyone's got money. They got their $600 a week in unemployment. They got $2,100. They are flush with cash. Well, now you go in to that garage sale and everyone's got $300. It's not so that you don't get a discount on the lawnmower. What it is that what you could have bought for $25 now might cost $50, $55, $60, whatever. People can just start bidding it up if they all want it, and they have the means to buy it. So what does that do? Well, what that does is it makes my savings worth less, because all of a sudden they have money, I have money, they didn't work for it, I worked for it and saved for it, and it's teaching everyone not to save. But that's a whole other video. But what is going to happen is eventually the dollar itself is not going to be worth as much. I mean, if he's going to get $60 for that lawnmower, if you look on Craigslist and look at what's available out there, and I use a lot of times I use these Polarized ATVs, the four, the two-seater side-by-sides. Everyone all of a sudden decides that they want to go camping because they can't go to Wally World and they can't go to Florida, SeaWorld, whatever, but they can go camping. And so that means every dealership is completely out of Polaris side-by-sides. Now on a used level, if you want to sell your side-by-side, what you could have sold it for just, let's say, $10,000 before, you can get $15,000 for it now, because you can't go down and buy a new one. That's inflation, okay? But it's driven by the shutdown of COVID. Well, when we get out of this COVID and out of this election, mark these words, we're going to pull the covers on this economy, and we're going to find out who and how many of these people that are not working, such as myself, are not going to be called back. And once the elections past us, there's no reason to flood the market flood people with money, because we were buying votes. I mean, both sides were on top of this. They're going, we can't have angry people coming to vote. The president didn't want it. The Democrats didn't want it, because they'd lose House seats. They want to pick up Senate. Everybody wants the public to have money before the election. Well, the election's over, COVID gets over, and all of a sudden we're going to see that we're probably going to have unemployment numbers that are going to be depressionary. And with that, you're going to have shortage of cash. Not this, you're going to go to that same garage sale, and that lawnmower, you might get it for $5. The sales of things are going to get crazy. And, this is just my take on it. So the reason is not COVID. The trouble started before COVID. We should have had a correction back in 2008. We had a little tiny correction. We didn't have anything that like what we needed. And what was their answer? They just created more and more money, more and more loans to big banks. And all the banks did, they were supposed to loan to you and I. All they did was buy their own stock back, which drove their stock price up. And then when they got it to a point where they wanted to stop buying, then all the CEOs sold at that high price. And then the stock falls down when they stop buying it. Because basically the Fed is buying the stocks now. You and I aren't buying any more stocks. Trust funds that handle your IRAs are not buying any more stock than they used to. No, it's the Fed. They're open face. They've admitted, they're not even denying it, that they're just buying whatever stock they need to buy every day in order to keep this market elevated. Until COVID goes away and the election goes away. Then they tried it in I believe it was 2015. After 2008, they bought every mortgage they could. They bought every bond they could. the federal, the bonds, the bonds that the federal government needs to operate. They bought everything that they could to get the economy going, to get, if I'm a bank and I want to loan to you, and I know that the Federal Reserve will take that paper, I'm at no risk, I'm going to make money, I'll loan to you. And the Fed is doing that. They're buying every mortgage. Why are the mortgage rates so darn low? When you would think everyone would be refinancing. You would think everyone would be buying a house. They wouldn't be that low if everyone was refinancing. If everyone wants something, then the price elevates. And what it is they're not telling you is that, yeah, there's a lot of refis going on. But there's hardly any inventory in the market for real estate, so the prices are sky high. And the only reason that those few listings are moving is because of the rates so low. If the rate jumped up 3%, then it'd be lights out. They know that. They know they can't move these rates. These rates can't move 2 points. And if they do, then that'll trigger. Something's going to trigger the correction. And it's going to come real soon because we've been waiting for this to end and it's really close. And we've been waiting for the politics to cease of the presidential election. So we're headed for it. It's a biggie. And if you're in a 401k, you might consider taking some out, diversifying into something. I'm not a gold bug, and no one really knows what that play is yet, but some sort of diversification. If you're just in stocks and bonds, then you could have a hard time. So I'm not a financial planner, and I can't tell people how to plan because I'm the worst in the stock market. I shorted the market when the market was, I believe, at 10,000, and I shorted it. I didn't put a lot in there, but I shorted it. It's still in there as a short, which means it's probably, whatever I put in there is probably worth 1% of what I put in. I'm the worst at the stock market, worst at investing, but I can see what's happening here. And it's going to be two presidents. There's going to be two people that are actually going to be making policy. And even though he's not in, if Trump doesn't win, even though he's not in, he has 50% of the people. He will have as big a voice as Biden. He will. And can you imagine a rally out in front of the Federal Reserve, or a rally out in front of a state that's going to do something that this 50% just absolutely doesn't want, like defund the police? Okay, this 50%, they're not sitting around anymore. I don't know if the politicians in Washington really understand how much of these people are still going to be active after this election. It's going to be, I think it's going to be very obvious. And you've got a new media with like Newsmax and OWN that is kind of Republican, kind of on the right, and then of course you've got the mainstream media that's on the left. So and the numbers are just growing. They're growing for Newsmax and OWN, and people are leaving Fox and leaving CBS, and really the old timers that used to sit down at 6 o'clock and watch the news, they've either died or they can't hear anymore. I don't want to be mean or cruel, but I mean, we're living in a digital age, and so you can get your news anywhere. And the mainstream media is getting close to being what the print media used to be. So what we're going to see is you can watch whatever you want in the form of news going forward. So we're going to have a real active 4 years. I think more of an active 4 years than we've seen after any presidential election, because Trump is probably going to run again in 4 years, or his son will run, or he'll put someone up there and then he'll get behind him 100%. We'll have rallies again, and it'll be a lot of activity, a lot of excitement. But I'll tell you one thing: whoever wins this election is going to be presiding over the biggest economic downturn in our history. And whatever political party that is, if Trump wins by some odd reason, then he's probably going to ruin it for Republicans, probably for 10 or 15 years. Because this economy is going to have a correction, recession, depression. It's somewhere in there. No one knows, but it's going to be big. It can't not be big. And whoever the president is, that party is going to be blamed for it. And they're going to be blamed for it for years, because we're not going to just, it's not V-shaped. The only thing that's V-shaped, the only reason it went V is because they threw more money at it than they've ever thrown at any economy in the history of man. The trillions that we had, a $1 trillion budget in 19. We're at $4 trillion right now, and the year's not over. And the only reason we're not at 6 or 7 is because of the election. Everybody wanted to just blame the other person, and no one wanted to work together to get another stimulus package, which may or may not come, because now there's no pressing issue. There's no election. There's no buying any votes. It's like, well, okay, should we or shouldn't we? They don't even think that way. Basically, it's whatever the special interests want. Therefore, that's what Washington wants. Therefore, that's what happens. Well, maybe not so much this time because of the other 50%. But anyhow, that's why I think that we're going to have 2 leaders for the next 4 years, and it's going to be a hairy, hairy time economically. And I hope I'm not. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be. I don't want to be in it any more than anyone else. But when you throw that much money out at an economy, and still the unemployment numbers are high. Oh my gosh! And at some point, that money stops working. It just stops working. And really, the only thing that got to the American people or the guy on the street was the $2,100 and the $600 a week. That was it. The rest of it was just bailing out, just basically saying, hey, American Airlines, just keep everyone on board. Because when we get to the other side of this, everyone's going to want to fly again, and we don't want to have our whole system of travel disrupted. So keep everyone on the payroll, and when we get to the other side of this, we'll just crank it. It's going to crank right back up again. Well, it's not going to crank back up again. Not quickly, not overnight, and they're not going to give them any more bailouts, because you are going to have 50% of the people come unglued. And before, they weren't even around. They didn't even get reported, first of all, if they were around, because you had the mainstream media, which was more of the Democrat, and really more of Washington. It's the Republicans and Democrats. The real economy never really got shown. Some places had some terrible times. But anyhow, you've got 2 different presidents going forward, unless Trump for some reason wins, and then watch out. Then it actually could get worse, because it'll be a constitutional crisis. It will be. It could get pretty darn ugly around here if Trump pulls it out. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Biden's going to go in there, and that's probably the best thing in the world for everyone, even though I probably would rather see Trump win. But now, if Trump wins, it's going to be, he stole it too, and it's just not going to be good. Either way is not going to be good, but the best scenario is for Trump to go on and Biden to go in, and then things will calm for a little bit, but you're gonna see that the first time that Biden starts to do some of the things that he said he was going to do, you're going to find a lot of pushback, and you're going to see how much pushback, and you're going to see that at the end of it all, there's going to be two leaders, and they're either going to have to work together, which I don't think is going to happen, or nothing will get done, which is going to be great for everyone, because the minute the government comes in and tries to do something and make it better, never works, always makes it worse. So anyway, enjoy your two presidents in 2021.